Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Mark Lynn. Namaskar, coming up in the next 30 minutes. US, Russia and Ukraine to hold first trilateral talks in Abu Dhabi over the next 2 days. EU boosts Greenland investment as Trump shifts stance and leaders now eye the trade deal revival. French Prime Minister Lecornu survives 2 no-confidence votes, pushes 2026 budget through by decree. Russian and Ukrainian officials will hold their first trilateral meeting with US officials in the United Arab Emirates, where talks will continue in military-to-military working groups. US negotiators, including Steve Witkoff and US President's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, are headed to Abu Dhabi, while the Russian delegation headed by General Igor Kostyukov, the director of Russia's GRU military intelligence agency, are also reaching there. And at the World Economic Forum in Davos, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced that these meetings would take place on January 23 and January 24. Further details of the talks in the United Arab Emirates have not been released. It is not clear whether Russian and Ukrainian officials will meet face-to-face. Earlier, Zelensky said that he would only travel to Davos if he could sign agreements with Trump on US security guarantees and post-conflict reconstruction funding for Ukraine. But there was no indication after the meeting that a breakthrough had been made. The two leaders have met around half a dozen times face-to-face since Trump returned to the White House last year and appended US policy on Ukraine by embracing diplomacy with Russia. Russia said that it was not dropping its key demand that Ukraine pull out of its eastern Donbas region ahead of three-way talks between Ukrainian, Russian and American officials in the UAE later on Friday. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that territory remained the key issue and would be on the agenda for the talks, which look set to be the first direct public negotiations between Moscow and Kiev on a plan being pushed by US President Donald Trump to end the conflict. The Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen is in Greenland's capital Nuuk for talks with the island's leadership. Frederiksen arrived from Brussels, where she had discussions with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. So the talks, they came after Rutte said that he had reached a framework understanding with Trump in Davos on Greenland. Both leaders agreed that NATO must step up efforts to strengthen security in the Arctic region. The European Commission chief Ursula von der Leyen announced plans for a major increase in European Union investment in Greenland aimed at supporting the island's economy, infrastructure and security amid growing tensions over US interest in the Arctic territory. The European Union leaders heaved a sigh of relief over Donald Trump's U-turn on Greenland as they met for an emergency summit in Brussels. The leaders said they want the EU-US trade deal to be back on track after the European Parliament suspended its ratification in protest over the US pressure to acquire Greenland. Speaking at a press conference, the European Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, she said that the EU has collectively underinvested in the Arctic and for Arctic security.
We have collectively underinvested in the Arctic and Arctic security, so now it's high time to step up and to build on what we already achieved. Beyond investment, we also intend to deepen cooperation with the United States and all partners on the important topic of Arctic security. In particular, we believe we should use our defence spending surge on Arctic-ready equipment, a European icebreaker, for example, and we should strengthen our security and defence arrangement with partners in the region.
Donald Trump said that the United States would work with NATO on Greenland security. U.S. President Donald Trump has announced a deal over Greenland, but the attempted unfriendly takeover has left its mark on Denmark and even some other European nations. Lars Holter is with Deutsche Welle. He joins me now from Berlin. Lars, what can you tell us?
Thanks for having me. Indeed, there are financial consequences being taken on the continent. A Danish pension fund, Akademikerpension, has announced that they will be divesting from U.S. government bonds. They are in fact selling their entire position by the end of January. Now, officially, the fund says this is not a political decision. Instead, they're saying, quote, the decision stems from the poor state of U.S. public finances and that they need to seek an alternative approach. However, the fund's investment director allowed that the current political developments, again, I quote, of course, didn't make the decision any more difficult. Also, a Swedish pension fund, Alecta, just announced that they've sold most of its holdings in U.S. treasuries over the last year, quote, because of the increased risk and unpredictability of U.S. politics. Now, to put this divestment into perspective, the Swedish fund sold around $7 billion worth of bonds, and Akademikerpension manages approximately 22 billion euros. The sale of the U.S. bonds represents a relatively small portion of the overall portfolio, so one has to realize that this is mostly a symbolic move.
Are these financial actions or threats against the U.S. limited to the banking sector, Lars?
Not at all. In fact, in Denmark, there's also a movement to boycott, or at least to avoid as good as possible goods made in the United States. It has gone so far as apps being developed to help consumers find out where a product at any given supermarket or store has been made. One app called Uden USA, or Without USA, has in fact made it to the top of the list in the Danish App Store. And that particular program has a database of products telling consumers if a product was made in the US and imported to Denmark. And it also suggests then alternative products, as do some of the country's supermarkets, by the way, that have started putting stickers up to identify US products. Now, as much as this is a sign of the Danish people's anger over recent US policy, it is unlikely to actually have much of an effect on the US economy. Denmark is a rather small country with only 6 million people. There are cities in the US that are bigger. So even a total boycott in Denmark would not make much of a dent here.
Lars Holter in Berlin, thanks very much. So the World Economic Forum concluded on Friday in the Swiss ski resort of Davos. Its leadership underscoring the importance of dialogue amid turbulent global landscape. And in his closing remarks, the WEF president, the CEO of the WEF, Borje Brende, he said that leaders used this week-long meeting process to identify areas of agreement, despite what he described as challenging moments. Brende stressed that sustained engagement remains essential, noting that real dialogue demands patience, commitment, and creativity, but it's indispensable.
Sometimes we really see strong disagreements. That's okay, because the purpose of the week and the forum's work over the year is to create a trusted space for dialogue. Dialogue is a prerequisite for moving the world forward. If you don't even have a dialogue, you will not see any results. This type of dialogue, real dialogue, is never easy. It requires patience, commitment, and creativity, but it is really necessary. Because the absence of discourse deepens division.
Moving on to France, where the French Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu has survived 2 no-confidence votes on Friday. In the process, he secured a symbolic victory also after using a constitutional provision to force through the income section of the 2026 budget without a parliamentary vote. The motions tabled by the hard left and far right, they in fact failed after the socialists, which is a key swing bloc, declined to support them following concessions by the government. The far right lawmaker Jean-Philippe Tanguy, and he criticized, in fact, his Les Républicains and Socialist Party colleagues after the rejection of the no confidence motions.
It's never too late for MPs to do the right thing. Even though today, unfortunately, the Socialist Party and the Republican Party, or what remains of them, have chosen to save their seats at the expense of the national interest. This is obviously very clear, and I think that no one is fooled, including the French people, who may today feel relieved with the adoption of this budget, but will soon discover all its flaws, including, I maintain, tax increases and a debt that is growing every day, and which unfortunately promises further tax increases in the future.
Lacudno has now moved to push through the spending section and also the full budget using the same constitutional power. This step is expected also to trigger further no confidence motions in the coming weeks as political tensions remain high in the National Assembly. US President Donald Trump has said that the United States had never needed NATO, criticizing its involvement in Afghanistan and questioning whether the alliance would come to Washington's aid if required. Speaking to a US outlet, Trump said NATO allies sent troops to Afghanistan but stayed a little off the front lines. In response, the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer's spokesperson said that Donald Trump was wrong to claim NATO troops stayed a little far from the front line during the war in Afghanistan. The UK Minister Stephen Kinnock also called the comments disappointing and wrong, noting that many European soldiers died while supporting US-led missions. Meanwhile, ex-Polish general has demanded an apology after Trump's remarks. He said that President Trump has crossed a red line because we shed blood for this alliance, quote unquote. Upping the ante, President Donald Trump, he also said that a US naval armada was heading towards the Gulf, maintaining pressure on Iran, although he has recently downplayed the prospect of imminent military action. The US warships, including the US aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln, several destroyers and fighter aircraft started moving from the Asia-Pacific last week as tensions between Iran and the United States soared following a severe crackdown on protests across Iran in recent months. Last week, Trump pulled back from a threat to strike Iran over its deadly crackdown on anti-government protests after the White House said Tehran had halted planned executions of demonstrators. But the Republican president on Thursday confirmed continuing military preparations. The United Nations Human Rights Council also will hold a special session to address the deteriorating human rights situation in Iran in Geneva on Friday. The special session is being convened following a request by Iceland, following also together with Germany, North Macedonia, the Republic of Moldova, and the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Still to come here on DD India Live. Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurates multiple projects in Thiruvananthapuram and Kerala. India's armed forces to showcase Operation Sindoor tableau at the 77th Republic Day Parade.
Welcome to Delhi.
टिंग टिंग अम्मा मैसेज मैं आपके मौसा के चाचा का नाती का पोता, शादी का कार्ड मैसेज में भेजा है, डाउनलोड करिए और आशीर्वाद दीजिए।
मैं तो आपको जानती भी नहीं, फिर भी शादी का कार्ड खोलूं? मैं मूर्ख नहीं हूँ।
क्या बात है अम्मा। यूपीआई कहता है अगर कोई अनजान नंबर से फाइल या लिंक भेजे तो क्लिक मत करो और कहो मैं मूर्ख नहीं। जाइए आप भी किसी का टेस्ट लीजिए।
One of India's
You're watching DD India Live. I'm Mark Lynn. TikTok has secured its future in the United States, announcing a new joint venture to operate its U.S. business and avert a nationwide ban. The deal reshapes ownership, tightens data security, and has drawn political attention from both Washington and Beijing. Rupa Kumar Jha reports.
TikTok has finalized a deal to create a new majority American-owned joint venture to run its U.S. operations, clearing the way for the popular video sharing app to avoid a ban linked to its Chinese ownership. The new entity, TikTok USDS Joint Venture LLC, will serve more than 200 million American users and 7.5 million businesses, while introducing stricter safeguards for data protection and content moderation. Under the arrangement, Chinese parent company ByteDance will retain a 19.9% stake, staying below the 20% ownership cap mandated by US law. American and global investors will hold the remaining 80.1%. Key investors including Oracle, Silver Lake and Abu Dhabi-based AI fund MGX, each holding 15%. US user data will be stored on Oracle's cloud infrastructures, with cybersecurity audited by independent third parties. US President Donald Trump welcomed the agreement, claiming credit for saving the app and thanking Chinese President Xi Jinping for approving the deal. Trump said TikTok played a key role in his appeal among young voters during the 2024 election. The move ends years of uncertainty after US lawmakers raised concerns that China could exploit TikTok's data or influence its algorithm. While analysts say users and advertisers are likely relieved, questions remain over how the new structure will operate in practice. Rupa Kumar Jha's report for DD India.
The Japanese Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi dissolved parliament on Friday ahead of a snap election on February 8, counting on her cabinet's high poll numbers. So the country's first woman premier had announced her intentions on Monday, seeking public backing for measures to shield households from rising living costs and to increase spending on defense. Takaichi is hoping widespread support for her cabinet will help deliver her a stronger mandate, even though the LDP itself is battling low approval ratings and a string of scandals. Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated, laid foundation stones and flagged off multiple development projects in Thiruvananthapuram, Kerala. The projects cover rail connectivity, urban livelihood, science and innovation. The initiatives highlight the government's focus on inclusive growth, technology-driven development and better quality of life for citizens. During the visit, the Prime Minister launched the Prime Minister Swanidhi credit card to strengthen urban livelihoods. PM Swanidhi loans were dispersed to 1 lakh beneficiaries, including street vendors from Kerala. The scheme enabled first-time access to formal credit for a large number of beneficiaries and played a key role in poverty alleviation and livelihood security among urban informal workers. During the event, Prime Minister also highlighted the hardships street vendors often faced, in fact they once faced, and how the Prime Minister's Swanidhi scheme will help improve their lives.
जो लोग सड़कों के किनारे गलियों में सामान बेचते हैं, इन स्ट्रीट वेंडर्स की स्थिति भी पहले बहुत बुरी थी। उन्हें सामान खरीदने के लिए कुछ 100 रुपये भी महंगे ब्याज पर लेने पड़ते थे। केंद्र सरकार ने पहली बार इनके लिए पीएम स्वनिधि स्कीम बनाई। इस स्कीम के बाद देश भर में लाखों साथियों को बैंकों से बहुत मदद मिली है। लाखों स्ट्रीट वेंडर्स को जिंदगी में पहली बार बैंक से कोई लोन मिला है।
The Indian Armed Forces will present a tri-services tableau, Operation Sindoor, Victory Through Jointness, during the 77th Republic Day Parade at Kartavya Path. The tableau would be a compelling and authoritative representation of the nation's evolved military doctrine, marking a decisive transition to precision integration as well as indigenous supremacy. So the Air Commodore Manish Sabarwal, he shares details about the tri-services tableau with DD India correspondent Akshay Dongre. Let's listen.
After India's Operation Sindoor, this is for the first time the Indian Armed Forces will be marching on the Kartavya Path on 26th of January. And one of the most prominent attraction of this Republic Day Parade is going to be this tableau. And a replica of that tableau is put here as well of the Operation Sindoor and how the jointness of the Indian Armed Forces in fact gave a massive blow to Pakistan and the terror infrastructure in the country. And to speak about this, we have Air Commodore Manish Sabharwal with us. Sir, thank you so much for speaking with us. Can you tell us about the tableau and give some more information on this?
The theme of this tableau is Operation Sindoor, Victory Through Jointness, and that is the motto of Headquarter IDS. So what you see in front of you is a portrayal of the 88 hours of Operation Sindoor, in which India achieved unsurmountable success. All the platforms that had taken part during that operation have been put on the tableau. For example, in the first night of operation, you knew that 9 terrorist hideouts have been destroyed simultaneously. So some of the equipment that took part in that is we use the army guns, that is the artillery guns, the Warmate kamikaze drone, and we also use Rafale with Scalp missiles to destroy the terrorist hideout. The same symbolic hideout has been portrayed right in between in the middle of the tableau. In the subsequent night, we destroyed their major military targets. For example, we used the Su-30's air-launched BrahMos missile, which you can see on your right, destroying one of the major air bases. The targets inside the hangar as well were destroyed, and some on the tarmac as well as the runway was destroyed. We have also tried to showcase the S-400's use in this operation, and also you'll be glad to know that first ever longest air kill, as was mentioned by the Chief of the Air Staff, has been achieved by us, and this is only because of our air defense networking, which for the first time had the army element also amalgamated, that is the Akash Tir and IACCS together. Yes, so that has been shown that the S-400 is destroying their AEWC aircraft. We have used the Herop also in destroying the Chinese-built HQ-9, their radar, and that has been showcased.
Jointness is being highlighted, how joint theaterization has worked, and perhaps even though the operation was, when it comes to hours, it was a relatively small one, but when it comes to impact, India has given a blow to a country as massive as Pakistan. It has nuclear armament, but still, the Indian Armed Forces have given a blow that Pakistan will never forget. Thank you so much for speaking with us, sir.
Thank you so much.
And this is, in fact, going to be one of the most important highlight of the 26th January parade this time around.
And finally, from the heart of Paris, Belgian fashion house Dries Van Noten unveiled its winter menswear collection, turning the runway into a canvas of rich colors, layered prints, and bold silhouettes. From embellished capes to striking patterned outwear, the collection, it stayed true to the brand's distinctive design language, confident, expressive, and unapologetically artistic. We leave you with these visuals. Thanks very much for watching. Namaskar.